Thank you very much to the organizers. It's very good to. Well, I love to speak about live coding. I've been told that you're a great audience, so that's great. So first of all, what is live coding? And after that, what's the potential that live coding has to create creative projects? First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Jesús Jara. Oh no, this doesn't work because I have to plug in a flash disk. So my name is Jesús Jara. I have a degree between technology, music, and education, and I'm currently the manager of the local music and dance school, Maria Dolores Pradera. And we have different paths, and we have a special one that is the one of sound digital creation. It's the first school at the region of Madrid, and I would say in Spain, where we could learn how to make electronic music. So we teach live coding as a tool to create music. However, it could seem that teaching music with technology means to teach how to use a program, but this is not the case at all. In fact, the live coding idea, there are people that think that doing live coding is like learning how to use a program, and that's not true. There are many programs to do live coding. These softwares are developments that have different formats or that have been developed in different ways. There are projects that are unipersonal, that come through, that have been created by just one person. There are approaches that have been created by a group and depend a lot on the community in order to be translated, in order to be tested, in order to be adapted to new needs, or just to improve them. And there's other software that has more powerful projects like Foundation. I'd like to speak about 6 projects of software development in live coding. One of the things that all these things have in common is that they are open source. You can find all these programs in open source. The one on the left is called Tidal Cycles. It has been developed by Alex McLean from the United Kingdom, and it's based on Haskell, and it works so that all the sounds are organized as patterns, rhythm patterns, in a circle way. And there are commands to organize these patterns and to work with the sequences. The one that you can see in the middle, top middle, it's Sonic P. It's developed by Sam Aaron. Is the one that we use at the school, and it is the one that we're going to use to make the demo. It was developed in the project Raspberry Pi. I don't know if you know it. And there was an interest to teach how to program all the UK students, at least at primary school, and they've decided that one of the languages had to be focused on the artistic way, and they started to develop this language. On the right, we have Hydra. It's quite modern, that has been created by Olivia Jack, who is an artist, a visual artist. So the program works on JavaScript on the browser, and we are able to parameterize many parameters and to make them visual. On the left bottom side, we can see Foxtrot, developed by Ryan Kirkbride, developed on Python. And one of the interesting things it has is that there's a parallel tool that is called Troop that enables us to do collaborative live coding among different people at the same time. In the middle, you can see Extempore, that has been created by Andrew Sorensen. It's based on Lisp. Lisp is a language that is quite good to make mathematical operations, and it's the one that was chosen to make live coding of physical systems on real time. And the last one's called Ixylang, that was developed by Thor Magnusson. It can't be considered as a language. It's some kind of mini language. It's been created on Super Collider, and the only thing you have to do is to write some letters to start to create sounds. So, what is then live coding? Well, live coding is a very brand new term for something that has been done for a long time. we do music with computers since computers exist, no matter their size. But we used to do music with electric machines and electronic machines before we had computers. So why do we have live coding? Because there's one specific way to call it. So the reason is that the word live coding in live coding doesn't have to do with live. It doesn't mean that we have to do it with an audience. It means that the code works live. I mean, there's enough processing capability in order to process the audio signal and to take this audio process to a stage. As you can see on the image, the live coding process is just to write a code, to execute it, and to leave it and to let it sound with a speech, so to speak, that can be either musical or visual or performative in many ways. And when somebody does live coding, one of the interesting things is that it can be considered as if there were two parallel thoughts. It would be a creative thought where you are thinking of a sound, for example, and a second thought that would be logic and abstract thought, like mathematical thought. So there's some kind of dialogue between these two types of thought. You have to be either creative because of the situation where you are in order to create some content, or you have to think from a very logic point of view in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And once you execute it, you need to have a very deep listening in order to know whether that is what you wanted or not. And if it's not, you have to assume it not as a mistake, but as a proposal in order to keep on being creative and to continue with this development. So this capability of having two mindsets at the same time to foster them in parallel, I think is one of the great potentials of live coding. Where can we go to a live coding concert? On YouTube, we can, any of the programs that you've seen can be found on the YouTube. You can find many videos, sessions, people using live coding, doing music with these programs, and so on and so forth. But, however, there's a place where we can see this live. It is what we call algo-raves. Algo-raves is a term that was invented in Great Britain by Mr. MacLean with the words algorithm and rave. These moments were conceived at the beginning as a meeting point for people that wanted to make music together. These are places where, normally speaking, the process is much more considered. I mean, the skills of the people that are programming in front of the audience rather than the final musical results. There's a great difference between live coding and maybe musical production. Live coding is specifically thought for live moments, or not specifically to produce music. This was the origin, places where they listened to dance, electronic music, where people came together to dance their favorite algorithms. But today, with the development of all these years, the algo raves have become into cultural time or contemporary time. So you can find algo raves at conferences, at festivals, at Center of Arts, galleries, and not only at bars, okay? So how does an algo rave look like? Something that is really necessary is that we can watch the code, and this is not a whim by live coders in order to show what they know, how or what they know. But if there's somebody typing on his computer, maybe he could be having a look at the email. So what is really worth it of a live of an algo rev session is to see what's going on. And there's another background idea, and it is transparency. There's an organization in the live coding world that is called TopLab, toplab.org. It's some kind of agency where we can see the news and the new things of the live coding world. And there's a statement that starts with this statement: show us your screens because the darkness is dangerous. It's some kind of will to show the creation process of what is being done live, to be transparent with it. The idea is that, well, live coders come from the do-it-yourself free software, and it's necessary that we open the source code of things to know how they work and not to isolate them in objects that nobody sees. We want to have them transparent. We don't have to be part of this philosophy. I mean, to be part of these ideas to do live coding. But there's a general international movement that is called TopLab, where there are communities and nodes of live coding that go towards this direction. So who traditionally organizes algorithms? Well, there are institutions that organize live coding concerts. We have some important live coders, but algorithms are organized in live coding communities. I know I don't know many international organizations that consider their local communities with this importance. I've mapped the local nodes that are included in toplab.org in order to see what's the live coding situation at this time. There's no, I mean, diversity is not very high. This is not a real map. There are people that do not belong to a live coding community, and they do their job and they organize algorithms. These would be the most consolidated communities, the communities where they've been working for a long time. There are people interested on the TopLab movement, all these thoughts that I've mentioned, and they have sent an email to the organization so that they can be listed as local community. This way, they're trying to have more visibility so that other people close to these community can get in touch with them to start to organize in the live coding movement. One of the things that is really interesting to me from the live coding point of view is their capability to self-train. I mean, the way they have developed everything so that their own members learn live coding. There is no live coding school. Maybe mine is the first one, I don't know. What we have are self-learning communities. So I would like to speak about the case of Mexico in TF. Around Center of Art, there was a group of people working with a software that is called Super Collider, that is an audio engine. They started to work to develop their own live coding technique, and they invented a technique that is called from scratch, that consists in that every person in the group plays anything for 9 minutes from scratch without any code prepared, so that in the end everybody gives a round of applause after these 9 minutes. So this is a pedagogical strategy that I'm using at my school with my students, so that people are not afraid of performing and are not afraid of programming, because programming in public is much more difficult than what you could expect. I think that we have all learned how to program in private, to seeing what works and what doesn't, but the fact of writing a code in front of an audience is quite dangerous. So, when is the time when the live coding communities come together and they start to develop? These are the international conferences, what is called ICLC, International Conference on Live Coding. Up to now, there have been 5 international conferences. They go throughout the world, and they have been sponsored between inverted commas by the universities, although they are not linked to a university, but these are the places where those artists slash professionals, or you name it, present the new developments or the new reflections, or where the community is right now. Around the, ICLCs are about this. There is a part that has to do with speeches and some concerts in the evening. I organized the Madrid ICLC last year. We had 200, 300 people from many parts of the world, and the relationship between communities was very present. And of course we had problems. And if I had to analyze specific projects in a from a creative point of view, the most creative ones are the ones that are being developed in live coding, I would go to one of these ICLC to look for them. So I would like to speak about 6 projects that were performed in 2019 ICLC. When I was thinking about this speech, I was thinking about 5 aspects that we can use to summarize the creative projects with a code. The live coding movement would be including the creative coding project that is much more impactful on a global scale. There are many conferences that encompass different aspects about code and creativity, or technology and creativity. And out of the creative coding movement, we can acknowledge at least 3 projects. It would be processing project, Arduino, and open frameworks that have a very big developers community with projects and groups that can be visited and out of which you can learn. And live coding would be a subgroup within this creative coding movement. So if you think of the type of projects that can be created in creative coding, I would like to pick up a couple of them. First of all, digitization. One of the things that we can do is to make something digital. We can digitize an image, a sound, or a 3D object can be digitized. Another line of development could be interconnection, the possibility that you have with creative coding to connect a MIDI interface with an image, or Meteo station with a performance. So this lets us follow creative line. And delocation can be important too. I mean, you're working at a country and the result of your work is at another place of the world. You can do this with live coding too. We could use parameterization. I mean, when you draw a picture, maybe you can't change things, but if you have an image with a code, there are many parameters that can be changed to change that image. And the last thing is the one that I've called hacking, and it is when through codes you get into a system to make it work in a different way as it had been conceived. This is a very powerful line of creation and creative coding. So with these ideas in mind, I'd like to introduce the next projects. We can see Scorpion Mouse. They were a couple. They came along to ICLC 19 in New York. They are a live coder and a singer. And the live coding creation process is done live, changing the voice that gets through the interface with the code. So the project is developed through this digitization. The project that you can see on your left are the visuals of Olivia Jack playing with Alessandra Cardenas in one of the Algo raves. So in this project, Olivia parameterizes all the aspects of her visuals, and she changes them in real time. Even the text, using the feedback of the screen, the text of her programming becomes into the source that she's going to change. And on the right, in the middle, you can see Story Project. They are a cybernetic orchestra of Canada, of the University of McMaster. This university has the most important development in terms of network live coding, and this program has been developed there. And there are people that either locally or remotely can play together and to do live coding from different places of the world at the same time. In the middle, on the left, you can see the Alexandra Cardenas project. It's called Street Code, and it's a project where she goes to do live coding on the streets, putting at stake all these policies of whether you can or can't do music on the street, where are the limits, putting all the reflections at stake. And at the bottom side, we have 2 interesting projects. On the left, I don't have a live video. I've made a snapshot. She's called Anna Chambaud, and through Super Collider, she logs into the API of Freesound. So she makes a search through tags. She downloads the free sounds and she mixes them live. Not only this, but also Freesound API has a parameter to do music information retrieval to get similar sounds in terms of tone to another sound that you were looking for, and to make connections to see how they sound. So they can look for a map sound, and after that she can use the MIR API in order to look for similar sounds but not exactly the same, to combine them all together live. And the one that you can see on the right bottom corner, this is Jon Labia. They come from the Netherlands, and they use a keyboard, a piano, as an interface to program. They're not mapping the keyboard keys with the computer. They are using different snippets of code to make electronic music. So as she improvises with the piano, when there's a tremolo or there's an arpeggio, or every time she increases the range of the piano, that's mapped, and the computer understands that as a command, and they execute instructions. So they generate electronic music that accompanies the piano. So they are subverting the idea that we could have about programming as something mechanic or as something that doesn't have any sound, and to make this programming fact into an artistic piece of art.
These are the projects that I have for you. I will kindly invite you to visit the websites, both from 2019 and 2020. So the next ILC would be held in Chile, in Valdivia. Often projects are streamed, so there are lots of ideas, papers, works from all over the world, relevant projects for those of you who are interested in embarking onto creative projects. How am I doing with time? Well, I've gone very fast. As there is some time left, I will share a tutorial with you to have a better understanding. All right, so we move on to the test. We check the keyboard. I bought it in Germany. Here we go. The name of the software is Sonic Pi. It is a way of doing live coding with lots of text, full words in English. It is good to have a good understanding of it. So it's an easy to understand language. There are two types of instructions. One of them is play, the other one is sleep. So this helps us separate sounds in time. The sound you can hear now is one of the default sounds, although you may change that and choose another sound. When you do live coding in general, when you produce electronic music, you use two sources. The sound syntax, such as DTM, and the other source of creation will be the recordings with the electroacoustic music. And because we are using that source, we can also use samples. I will be using all the samples that come in with the by default with the software, although you should know that you may add some others. So this would be the sound that comes by default. Live code would not be interesting if you could not automate processes, if you have to write every single note of everything you want to create. That would make it very complicated. To avoid that, we create loops that come in within coding blocks. Those coding blocks move on to a different process, a process where they are compiled and where the sound is generated and stored. As long as I can change the master sound, I go into this musical discourse. So I will make it sound, and I will show you an example as how you can change the code on the fly. Well, I just forgot what I was about to say. You've seen the error, isn't it? You write something, then you change it, you run it, and then I don't finish it, and then the program tells me that does not understand it. So it is good for you to see that I have made that error and I fixed it, and then I move on. So the good thing about live coding, the huge difference between writing code in a private manner, so to speak, then you just go for lunch and come back, versus writing that code live, okay? And now, well, we'll be finishing soon, and then there will be time for questions. We have time for questions. Please go ahead. Please use the mic for your question. Please raise your hand. This is for electronic music, isn't it? Yes, it is. You may simulate virtual instruments, but best application is electronic music. When you introduce a hip-hop beat and a loop and then you make it sample, you may also create hip-hop beats, isn't it? Yes, that's it. So thank you very much for your answer. We have another question over here and another one over there. Is there anything similar to plugging guitar or bass so that you can play live? Well, nearly all the live coding software does that for you. Which one would you recommend? With live coding or with another program? Well, doing live coding but injecting music or plugging music from electric guitar or you name it. As far as I can remember, the most comprehensive one is Super Collider. It's from Sonic Pi. Super Collider does that. VData does that as well. Extempore, Tidal Cycles doesn't do it. Some programs do it, some do not do it. It would be as easy as to do a live audio loop. I wouldn't like to do it because I just don't want it to create or generate lots of feedback. And there is another syntax known as audio input, sound in stereo. With those two, as well as an audio card with a line input, you may inject audio and then to add the same effects that I add to the sound that I generate. You are using OX. Can you do this in Linux? Yes, of course. You can do that too. That would be perfect. Well, these are multi-platform software, both Tidal and the others. There are some elements such as libraries, may require some pre-installation, but that would be it. Thank you very much. Very interesting, your presentation. Very unique. I'm quite into music. What about modular synthesis? How can you modulate that from one instrument to another? What can you tell us about the coding in Sonic Pi? So modular synthesis, what do you mean by that? So for instance, the output of a synthesizer, how does it modulate a parameter from another synthesizer? Well, everything depends on the communication between your PC and the instruments. For instance, if the instrument receives MIDI, you may program a Super Collider for an input to launch some triggers. If you want to control voltage, you will need a specific equipment for that. And the most common thing nowadays is Open Sound Control, OCS. This is the best way to, well, for digital elements to be communicated, to speak to each other, but within the same software. I've seen that you've been using an FM synthesizer and different one. Can you send out something from one loop to another? I'm not very much into live coding. So do you mean delivering a signal from one loop to another, from live loop to live loop? Yes, that's it. Well, Sonic Pi cannot launch messages of that kind. The Super Collider running under it can send out audio signals. This language allows messages, OCS messages, from a live loop to another live loop. We use that to synchronize some live loops. If I want to synchronize bumbo at the end of melody, at the end of the melody, I write a message and then it triggers sound. But audio communication between live loops, I don't see the application or the need for that, because you may enter or use all the sound that you would like. Why would you like to send signal from one loop to another? Well, if you are generating signal for synthesizer with the modular signals and the frequency of another synthesizer. So if you want, we can discuss that bilaterally. Well, all the programming languages have an objective. Sonic Pi has educational purposes. If I were to use beep, which is the synth, I wouldn't use it. I could not use it as a modulator. For that, we have Super Collider, which runs underneath. Okay, I may open it so that you can see it. I'm talking about Super Collider like if it were a ghost, but it does exist. That sinusoidal signal can be used as a control. It's an object that doesn't have AR signal, but a KR signal. You may modulate other signals. And now I get your question. Well, you were asking me about modular synthesis. That is to say, you creating your own sounds, and the best one to do that is Super Collider. In Sonic Pi, we have I have created or pre-created synthets. This is not only about creating sound. You really want to have a musical discourse with a beginning and with an end. So this allows you to create the beginning and the end of the session. Both things are needed. Sonic Pi would be for Super Collide, and the other one would be more suitable for Super Collider. All right, I'll show you now. This object is a sync, and then you say that you want to use that frequency. You may use it as AR, as a sound, or as KR. I may call another oscillator whose frequency is modulated. Okay, and these help us correct the sound. So these are the type of structures where you use a combination of objects. For that, Super Collider is best because it is oldest language. All right, there is another question over there. Please stand up. Good morning, Jesus. I'd like to ask you about the possibility of connecting that from an external Pi, either API or with Arduino or hardware stuff. Can you use it with the parameters that allow you to input analog signals or information from Twitter API that can use the parameters and generate that real time? Well, that is a mix of a question where when you are talking about an analog signal, you may do some kind of process. You may create effects. These are audio effects, but getting a signal and using parameters, you can only do that through the frequency, touch up the volume a bit, and then the spectrum. Well, I'm not talking that much about guitar. You can process any audio, but I'm talking about presence sensors, humidity sensors. Yes, of course, depends on how you plug in the sensor or Arduino to the computer. You will have different protocols. Either the Arduino protocol, SCF protocol, no matter where the data come from, and they are numbers that you can use to as you would like. And actually, my dissertation was about a tweet with a hashtag. You filter it from SuperCollide by using the elements already in the OS, and then you wrote melody, and then you can listen to it live. And actually, well, if you want to call me back, I will come back next year and will give a presentation about that. Yeah, we can do shared live coding. I very much like your presentation. This is very much associated with the hacker community because, well, we've been using similar languages before. So are there reverse tools? That is to say, by listening to the music that you are listening, that has been created, can you go back to the coding? No. Well, that music information retrieval, you cannot do that. Turning code into music that has been generated or created in guitars would be very difficult. You could retrieve information about the chord, the length of the note, the amplitude and tone spectrum, but that would look ugly in the code. The way I visualize all that would be challenging. I'm not aware of any tool like that. So regarding Tracker, in Media Lab there is a party, Retro Madrid 2020. We are looking for people who would like to produce algorave 8-bit music. If someone would like to join, please let me know. Well, we have another question. I understand that Sonic Pi sends events to Super Collider. Can those events be recorded somehow? Understand that it kind of betrays the philosophy behind it, but can you play later on what you could play it live? Yes, you can do that perfectly all right, because Super Collider receives communication between processes that is set in OCS. It will be kind of rewriting the library of OCS reception so that it is printed out somewhere. And well, you said that that is not the spirit of live coding. This is not like that. All the music improvisation has been rehearsed before, so somehow there is a record of what you are doing, a record that is kept in the memory. For demo purposes, it is good to start from scratch so that you see how to do it, but sometimes the coding has been pre-written, and sometimes it is easier to record a video from the screen for you just to see the movement. Only the information that reaches OCS would not make it complete, because if you sent out an event, you really need to know how you did it, when you did it. I would just do a screenshot. Oh, this is a killer question. Do you like jazz music? This is the second time that I'm asked this question today. Andrew Sorensen, creator of Extempore, has significant musical training. Are you aware of this clavier? It is kind of like a piano. You can send in MIDI and the notes are played autonomously. So he has done that, similar to that in jazz style, perfectly all right. However, the musical creation has to be limited to jazz standards. There are very many limitations, chords, etc., different styles, and there is a tool that allows you to kind of create generic sounds. So I personally find it limiting to do that with, well, for jazz music, but I'm ready to work for that at a good price. Okay, free jazz, there is no standard to follow, nothing. Yes, but even free jazz has been overcome today. So now we have free improvisation sessions where the sound concept is not limited to the musical note concept. That is to say, any sound object becomes part of a music. Yes, Pedro Iturraldo did one in Clamores venue. That was wonderful. So we have 2 more questions. So thank you very much, Jesus, for your presentation. Highly interesting. 2 questions for you. One, just to add a bit of creativity. Is there a possibility to program some macros through MIDI so that through a potentiometer you can write a line and then change or alter a value? Well, if I'm understanding you well, it is controlling the parameters within the coding with an interface. Yes, exactly it. Instead of writing the line, you have pre-programmed lines, and then with oscillators, with potentiometers. Yes, you do that with super colliders. You say, well, this variable depends on the value of this potentiometer, and then they are connected. And this is kind of very much done. We should not forget that live coding is limited because it is a pure algorithm, and you must follow the programming language, and not everyone feels comfortable with that. So therefore, a good number of artists worked in a mixed way. So they just want to create crazy sequences, but at the same time they just want to fine-tune the values. Okay, and then some people use live coding for sound sequencing, and they have modular synthesizers that modulate sounds, and they sound beautifully stronger. So all that is valid. I just don't want to be too puristic here and to communicate that it is just coding, starting from scratch. Not at all. It is just a tool at the service of creativity. My next question is whether this software supports a shared session. That is to say, making music with other people by joining in the same session, and each of the individuals taking charge of instruments. Well, it's not actually an instrument, but it is a sound layer. Yes, there is shared live coding. You need a good router with a good bandwidth. And then in terms of tools, I mentioned Story. You may take a look at that. That helps you log into a server, and then you do that from your browser. The browser is connected to the actual sound. You may also use Troop. There was a wonderful session about Troop in the CES in Madrid. There was a guy, and he was playing with 2 people in the UK. They connected to the text editor, and they were all sharing the editor. But to play as a group, you do need to rehearse a lot to perform well. And also with Tidal Sync, you can synchronize timestamps. It's wonderful because you have 2 sounds sources, and you can control timing very well. And this is essential in music creation. So thank you very much, Jesus.
Our Child Logic beers that will be settled by DXA, they will be playing music, so